Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's in the choir we figured that out, and that's why we're doing that.
Yeah,
I think what we need to do is we need to get that message across to the management of these organizations, CSOs, VPs of engineering, so they get it, VPs of marketing, CEOs, and then they can start to incorporate things into their their culture of their company. That software security related, and I've started to see that happen at some large companies. Microsoft has started doing this, having presentations at their MSDN conferences. They're actually doing presentations on security to developers. So, I mean, this was unheard of like 5 years ago. You go to a developer conference and hear about security. So obviously Microsoft gets it. I was at a Fortune 50 company which woke up one day and said, "Hey, wait a minute, we have like 5,000 developers. We're a software company, even though they're not. They're a big conglomerate." And they said we need to get a handle on and start to act like a software company. And so we need to get together and get all our architects together, and we have to all have them all thinking the same and having common processes and like that. And so they had a 5-day bringing all the software leaders together, and they spent the whole day on security. They said, well, if I'm going to get all the software leaders in one place, company-wide, for 5 days, let's spend 1 day on security. So I mean, that's because the CSO at the company is very enlightened to the impact of the software. So I mean, I'm starting to see it a little bit.
Yeah.
And another thing that I can say is if you wait until you get the lawyers involved, that's when it gets really expensive. Some of us that do a lot with computer law, we are seeing possibly some federal legislation here in the U.S. coming down the line for tort liability. And so right now, if the market doesn't make their software more rugged, it looks like if the federal government gets involved, that's when things get expensive for liability, tort liabilities, such as we have this with products liability. So it's concerning to think about this, but of the companies that come to me and I do some IP filings for them, I cannot stress like how concerned I am, how when some of them come in and they say, well, we're really going to protect our code and the usage of it with the DMCA, with patents, things like that. So they're using pieces of legislation to kind of
eyebrow twitch.
Yeah, to like if you break into this, we're going to get you on a patent violation. That type of stuff, that's not good security. But so I'm just suggesting don't leave it to the lawyers or the legislatures. If we can manage this within the software community, I think that'd be better than what we might see a couple years down the line.
Yeah, I think it's fundamentally a logistics problem in a lot of cases because you have tens of thousands of companies, you have 6.7 billion people on the planet, and there's only a small number of us to get the message out there. We are making progress. I've seen tremendous progress in the last 10 years. Now, of course, there's more attacks than ever, but we've still made a lot of progress if you actually look at what's going on. If you look at like what Microsoft is doing as an example, what Oracle's doing, these different groups. Now, one thing I would throw out there, though, is we kind of need to clean up our own house first because we got security vendors out there saying they have things that are 100% secure, which is complete bullshit, and we all know that. Call them on it. Ooh, the pin just dropped. I heard that.
I think... to all of us, it's kind of a duh concept, to get it right at the beginning, because maintenance is always the most expensive part. We kind of think of ourselves as more a new or different industry, but really you can look at anything from car manufacturing on up, and there are hundreds of case studies of systems engineering where they show that if you get it right in the design phase, it's cheaper overall, by a lot.
There's a lot of I'm sorry.
I was just going to say a lot of this is just recognizing that what we're talking about here with designing secure software is part of that design phase. It's part of the, the spit shine before you send the car off the end of the line.
So a lot of our analogies for this, in fact, a little bit of how the sausage was made, the original intent on this was not just to be a contagious meme. When we were lamenting at RSA last year, we were saying, what we need is, just like the auto industry, they resisted the 5-star crash rating system, right? They totally resisted. They said it was going to ruin the whole industry.
Now it's a marketing point.
And now they're actually thinking of adding a 6th star to further differentiate. I mean, people who want safe cars will pay extra for the safest car. So there are a lot of analogies, and we were looking for what's the 5-star crash rating system for ruggedness. Another idea was how can you objectively certify a programmer to be a rugged one so they can differentiate themselves in a crowded market. And ultimately we realized that, we got a lot of certifications, a lot of tools, so let's just start first with is this something sticky people would value and seek? There's a Walmart example that David Rice uses, that Walmart started adding this environmental sustainability index. So if you can buy toothpaste that's $1 or toothpaste that's $1.10, but next to it's a more sustainable one, if you care about that, you'll pay the extra 10 cents because you can now differentiate, because we're describing it. And I'm kind of hoping that this could evolve, and there's efforts from independent vendors to do seals of approval or validation. And I think that's the beginning of doing this. And this might take 5 or 10 years, but if the concept is at all attractive to the choir, I'm strenuously asking that we weave the rugged language into our vernacular and start sharing it more.
One thing, I just was in the Adobe presentation, the Adobe P-Cert, and they said that internally at Adobe, they have a karate style belt system for their developers. And in the Adobe directory, when you look up a person, they'll actually have their security belt color, if they have one, will be there. So if they take the basic developer training, they get a white belt. If they take a more in-depth training, they get a brown belt. Green belt. And then if they actually do they sort of do a security project, like they build a fuzzer for their product that they're doing or something like that, they get the brown belt. And then I'm not sure how they get the black belt, but those are the guys in the security team, so they probably designed it.
I just wanted to see, who here has seen nerd merit badges?
Oh, yeah,
we need a rugged merit badge.
That's right.
It runs the risk, though, of becoming another, checklist type thing. They just, it could. I don't want it to turn into another PCI where it's like, because there's two ways to do PCI, right? You can do the checklist of firewall check, or you can take the spirit of it. And the companies I know that look for the spirit behind the rules, those are the ones that get it. But how do you do this and have people actually get the spirit of it, not just follow the letter of the law to get the stupid little seal on their website?
You in the back?
So you're discussing a lot about how the development community has failed and how we need to get them to do things. Well, what we overlook a lot is the format stream vulnerabilities, which don't exist anymore, but mostly because developers realize they exist. You're creating while you're discussing originally with the agile development, how it might be the antithesis of security or might be good or bad, you're overlooking the fact, I believe, that you need to look at the development life cycles and how one guy will miss something. The best and most secure coders in the world have written great codes like, what's better than stern copy? Stern copy buffs stir arbitrary network info. From someone I know that came from probably one of the most secure pieces of software you will ever imagine. And the thing is, if you're focusing more on making this a meme than an educational effort, because buffer overflows are hard to do anymore. And we can't patronize these developers, and we're not. We just aren't teaching them. We're not showing them this is why the race condition dies.
But you're talking about a specific set of developers, right? Because the application developers in corporations aren't writing in C and C++ anymore. So they're not really hitting the format strings, the buffer overflows. They're writing in Java and .NET, and they're coding a SQL injection like you wouldn't believe.
And they've never heard of CSRF.
Right, they've never even heard of it.
They've just never heard of it. And which is the same thing as you're saying fundamentally. And a lot of this is the Rugged Manifesto is originally just a manifesto, but there are other efforts that people are sort of starting to talk about that are specifically about educating people.
I've actually encountered several firms that do, yours is one of them, but do training for developers, very exhaustive training, in-person training, computer training, topic-based courses. And, like I said, the three of us that started this, we don't have, this is not our job. This is an idea we want to promote and push to get people to look at their first OWASP chapter, to get people to go to a school or take a class that might, like Dan Guido, you're in the room here. So you did this at, New York Poly, right? So start to point people, even if it's simply a registry on our website that says, here are universities that have a course that you could take. So if someone heard about this.
Even if it's putting up posters around the CompSci building telling people when the next OWASP meeting is.
Right.
Yeah.
You have a question, Brett?
Yeah, one of the points that I rarely ever hear, but I think has a big impact as far as cost and security, is end of life. Too many